Right, I think the microphones are on, so I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, April 10th, 2018, and we'll start with roll call.
John Francis,
Here.
Barbara Stockhausen,
Here.
Ken Killian,
Here.
Eileen Nichols,
Here.
Tom Nall,
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here. First item on our agenda this evening is a public hearing regarding ordinance 1804, and we'll start with staff presentation.
Okay, the property at 860 Northside Drive has had an issue with the failed septic system, so they had a need to connect to the city's sewer system. Our city policy requires annexation before any property outside the city is allowed to make that connection. So the property owners have submitted a request for annexation. And then if approved, they would like to have the property designated R2, 1 and 2 family residential. The property is contiguous to the city boundary, actually on 4 sides. There's a narrow strip of ground that's also not in the city that would basically be annexed as a follow-up to this if it's approved. And I will start working on that shortly. The zoning itself, the R2, 1 and 2 family residential as requested, is compatible. That's the same zoning as the property adjacent to it, and it is compatible with the comprehensive plan designation. So that is the proper zoning for that location. The Plan Commission reviewed the request and recommended approval. The state of Wisconsin did a review of the annexation and it met their requirements, so they're good to go. And staff does recommend approval of the annexation and the zoning. Any questions?
Questions from the council? All right, since this is a public hearing, we have a number of steps to go through. Next is the applicant's statement. If you'd like to come up to the microphone and make a statement, you may do so. If you give your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Nathan Manmuller. I'm the resident owner of 860 Northside Drive. I really don't have any additional information. I think the proposal is pretty straightforward. Looking at the map, I think it's also pretty cut and dry. Just wanted to stand up and introduce myself and say what I appreciate a yes vote.
Thank you. I'm sorry, if you have a question, we can have you come up in a little bit, okay? Okay,
And
go ahead.
you want me to answer that question?
Yeah, I think you probably can at this time.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't really fully hear the whole
Yeah,
question.
that's the problem. Usually we record the question, so I tell you what, there's a space where you can come back up, so.
Sounds good.
We'll have her come up and do it.
Okay.
So thank you. So next we would have public statements in favor, public statements against, or public statements in general. So if you'd like to come up to the microphone, if there's a way that someone can assist her with that.
Also get her a green sheet so we know who she is.
Yeah.
One of these.
Yeah. 20 years.
And if you will give your name and address, please.
Sure. My name is Ellen Stufflug. My address is 795 Country Club Court in Platteville. And my question is, could you tell me which land that holding tank is for the septic?
If you have an answer, yes, you can come up and answer that question.
The holding tank is located just north of our house on our property, on the 860 property.
It's right on the line then, correct?
The holding tank is located about 10, 11 feet just north of the foundation of the house.
Okay, what is the tank that's in the way back by the pine trees?
There's the manhole, which is the city's sewer. Is that what you're referring to?
It's got a green cap on it that you were digging the other day from that
I
thing up
believe
there?
that is the manhole for the city sewer,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yep, and that is just right on the edge. It actually, about a half to a third of the manhole is on our property. It's basically right on that property line.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I just wanted to know that.
That's your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a question also from a council member for you.
Sure.
You have a holding tank?
As a part of the sewer, the septic system, there was a holding tank and a drain field, which was there when we purchased the property.
So the holding tank has an outlet. It goes into the filter field.
Correct.
Into the,
Correct.
so the filter field is failing.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought when you said holding tank, that you were pumping periodically out of the tank and you weren't using the filter field.
The field was there and working up until February 2nd.
Okay.
At that point, it failed, and we had the septic company come and empty the tank for us. Basically, every 2 weeks it would fill up, and we would have them come and empty it again, so that we could continue to live there. It was just a necessary part of that.
Okay, can I ask any more questions? Sure. Have you tested your well water?
Yes, sir.
And how does it test as far as nitrates?
Nitrates are 2.91. I don't have the paper with me. I'm sorry, I didn't bring it with, but anything below 10 is considered acceptable. LV Laboratories in Lancaster did the test.
Okay, so you don't have a problem with bacteria?
Nope, bacterial count was 0, and arsenic was also 0.
And the reason for hooking up to the city is what?
The drain field failed. In order to conform to current code, the drain field would have to get basically rebuilt. However, due to current standards, there isn't sufficient room on the property to make that happen. All the surrounding properties are on city sewer, and it seemed a pretty logical choice to go that route, as opposed to trying to figure out a way to build another drain field. There was also some concern by the plumber when I spoke with him about whether we would even pass a perk test, which would indicate the need for a mound system, which is even more space and more work. So it really made the most sense. When looking at the map, we realized that it's kind of really not a whole lot of thought needed to make that logical step.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What is your plan with the holding tank and the drain field?
The drain field itself is basically, it's dissolved. It was a single perforated pipe that was cast iron, and that has basically rotted away. The holding tank was concrete, and just a decommission of that, and just destroy it essentially in the ground and fill it once it's been
Okay.
emptied.
Okay. So you'll fill that in, so it's not
Correct.
a hazard.
You got it.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other public statements in general? Anyone else have a comment? All right, then it's time for council discussion. Any other council discussion?
A question for Howard. Could you explain to us when the applicant would have to hook on to city water?
Basically, when the well fails,
The well?
when his current well fails is when he would need to hook on. As part of previous projects, water and sewer stubs were made available to that property as part of other developments, so it's there whenever it's required.
That was part of what, Northside Drive? Is that correct or not?
The water service was installed as part of the Northside Drive project, and the sanitary sewer manhole that we had the question about earlier was installed during the construction of that subdivision up there. Mr. Cody installed the the manhole and the line as part of the construction of that subdivision.
How many, do you know offhand how many private wells we have with public sewer?
There are a few, I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I so move.
Second,
We have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes,
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Knoll,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
motion carries.
And common council action.
I make a motion, we adopt ordinance 1804, creating section 43.53 of the municipal code, annexation and rezoning of 860 North Side Drive.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
yes,
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Knoll,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, we'll go on to the consideration, the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer separate discussion and action. A is council minutes from the March 27th, 18 regular meeting. B, payment of bills. C, financial report for March. D, appointments to boards and commissions, and there are 2 appointments this evening. For the library board, Kyle Riemann, and for the Police and Fire Commission, Deborah Rice. I would also remind council members that they did receive a list of the boards, commissions, and committees that council members serve as a liaison to, and I would ask that that is brought back completed to our organizational meeting next week. E is licenses, a temporary Class B license to sell fermented malt beverages and wine to the Friends of the Platteville Municipal Auditorium for a Dead South with Wheelhouse concert at the auditorium here on Friday, May 4th. Also in your packet, applications for 1-year and 2-year operator licenses to sell and serve alcohol. A request for a street closing permit, Park Place from Irving Street to Market Street for the farmer's market on Saturdays, 7 a.m. to noon, beginning May 5th through October 27th. G, there are some uncollectible bills that we will be canceling for the 2017 budget year. And H, there's information on the council organizational meeting, and again, that will be here next Tuesday, April 17th at 6 p.m. Is there a motion?
I would just note that the bills that are being canceled are bills from 2015. They may have
For the
been included in the
2017 budget
2017
year,
budget,
right.
but
yeah.
they are old bills. I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
second,
We have a motion and a second, we'll vote.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
yes,
Killian,
yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Knoll,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
motion carries.
Next is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, and Mr. Killian has asked to provide some information.
I'd like to make a few brief comments about meeting which is coming up. And this is the Wisconsin Association of Historic Preservation Commissions. We have a local historic preservation commission here in Platteville. And our meeting dates are April 27th, 28th. The title of the program is Tools and Procedures to Identify, Protect, and Restore Historic Structures. The meeting is going to take place at First English Lutheran Church, and we'll start off in the morning with welcome from the city manager at 8:30 in the morning. And then I'll just go through briefly some of the other things. Next is an overview of what the conference is about. 9 o'clock is certified local government, and 9:30 is going to be discussion about Section 106, which the city and the local commission used this past year as far as trying to save the Gates Hotel. And then 10:45, we have with us Joanne Eastlick, who used to work for the city. She's going to talk about the start of historic preservation as far as the city historic ordinance and the commission starting back a number of years ago. And then 11:30 is going to be the current status of state and federal historic tax credit programs. 1:15 is gonna be, report from Wisconsin Historical Society. 2:30 to 3:30 is going to be, digital tour of the Platteville Main Street, presented by Bill Kramer, who's a member of this local commission. 4:30 is going to be a meeting at the Berg House. The Berg House is the large, beautiful house next to the public library. Awards will be presented at that place to various people throughout the state. And then Saturday is two presentations. The first one is a gathering of people in the lead mine district by Tracy Roberts, and 10 a.m. is Platteville History Uncovered by James Hibbert. James Hibbert works at the university and has made a number of presentations. And then after that, there are tours throughout the city. So thank you very much.
Any other comments from city council members? I think our city manager has something to say.
I just wanted to take a quick moment and acknowledge that this is the last meeting for Council Member Tom Nall, who served the entire time since I've been city manager for the last 3 years. And it was really fortuitous that I happened to find this on my desk tonight. I believe this was left by Tom. And I think this really symbolizes a lot about Tom. Whenever I have now, I think this is my 4th book from Tom. And whenever I've felt a little discouraged, or I'll often go and read from his books, which are very inspirational and I think a reflection of the man himself. So, Tom, we will miss you greatly. We have a lovely certificate for you that I think you saw earlier.
Thank you.
Which deserves a round of applause. Do you want to say anything? No? Okay.
No?
Thank you.
And I would echo everything that Karen just said. Appreciated your time on the council. You were very, very good council member, very informed. I think that's really important to come to the meetings and having done your homework. So thank you. All right. Any other comments or questions from any council members? All right, then we're going to go on to the reports in our packet. First is the Plan Commission. Any additions, Nichols or Knoll?
None.
I have none. Commission on Aging, Knoll?
None.
Museum Board, Westaby, and obviously she is no longer on the council. Housing Authority Board, Killian.
No addition.
Other reports in the packet include the Water and Sewer Financial Report from March, the Airport Financial Report from March, and then Department Progress Reports. Any questions on any of those?
No, but I would comment that people can expect to see construction and at the airport during the latter half of July and then on through, hopefully done by the summer, as the runway is resurfaced.
Anybody else? All right, we'll go on to the first action item, Resolution 1805, repealing and recreating assigned parking locations, which was tabled, so it would require a motion to take it off the table.
I make a motion to bring this off the table.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Knoll,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I'm not sure if any staff member wants to give any more reports on this or not, but nothing to add this evening. All right, council discussion.
I'll start since I sent at the last meeting, after the discussion in the group or in the chamber, I kind of floated this idea that perhaps we could look, it became evident that our downtown business owners that have property that is perhaps rented to tenants felt a real pinch with going to kind of 100% leasing. And so I talked in that meeting about what if we made the periphery lots free parking. So the proposal had already said something about the lot on Roundtree, which is on the east side of Roundtree Avenue. That it's I don't know what perpendicular parking. I don't even know what kind of, is that what you call it? Perpendicular parking. There are 27 spaces in that lot. And currently, we had identified 13 of those for lease and 24-hour for free parking. I said last time that since it's peripheral to the core of the downtown, why not just make all of those free? That would be 27 free spaces. The other two lots that I call peripheral lots are the ones up here at 4th Street and Furnace. There's one on the northeast side and one on the northwest side. Currently, 8 places in one and 14 places in the other are available for lease. And if we made those free 24-hour parking, the 27, the 8, and the 18 would give 53 free 24-hour parking spots. And they would be peripheral to the downtown. My second thought last time was then let's have some spots available for leasing. Currently, we have 35 spots available for leasing. Many of those are in the peripheral lots, and many, I don't believe, are leased. So the Mineral Street lot behind us is to be redone, and in the proposal by the Parking Task Force, the northernmost row of 13 spots, I had written 11 in my proposal or my note to the city manager, but I have now learned that that should have been 13. 13 spots there then would be available for lease. That would be closer to the downtown, but it would be like a premium to be able to get to park there. You'd have to pay. And then in the Oak Street lot, last time we talked about the 11 spots that are on the west side of the Oak Street lot and that are fully occupied all the time. Again, those are kind of premium spots, and so I would propose we would lease those. If people didn't want to lease, they would have access to these 53 other spots that are free. And then the post office lot, there are currently 26 24-hour free spots. I would reduce that to 13, which would be on the farthest south side. So totally, we would have 37 spots available for lease. At first, my first go-round, it matched what we have now. It was just closer to the downtown. So we would have then of 174, I think that's the right number, total downtown city-owned spots. At that point, there would be 90 spaces out of 174 that would be available for overnight parking. Two-thirds of them would be free, 1/3 of them would require lease payment. So it's kind of a different way to balance it. Those 90 spots account for more than 50% of the parking in the downtown area that's owned by the city. And I must always say owned by the city because there are other lots here that are owned by property owners and stuff that, of course, the city has no control of that parking. So that was kind of my proposal. If the spots that we identified in Mineral, Oak, and or the post office lot were not leased, then I would suggest that those simply be available for full day parking, but no parking from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And that way they aren't overnight spots, but if I'm an employee and I park in the Oak Street, if there's only 2 spaces leased in the Oak Street lot, that would leave 9 spaces that were available to park all day long except from 3 to 6 at no charge. So if I were an employee, I could park in those full day parking spots. So that was kind of that's what I tried to convey last time, but I didn't have all the lots and the lot numbers in front of me.
All right. questions or comments from other council members? And just, again, just a reminder that we have discussed this a number of times for the public, that the staff is asking that we either make some changes, stay the same, but give some direction so that the leasing portion especially of this proposal can go forward in a timely fashion.
Or just for my knowledge again, how many overnight would there be on Oak Street?
On Oak Street, in the Oak Street lot, there would be 11 spots available for lease.
Early?
And currently, there are 11 spots that are available that are free. But they're overnight spots. So I would propose that we would make those, since they're in the central part of the downtown, available. I have not looked at handicap situations, and I would suspect that our city staff, if somebody came in and there were a special circumstance and they were living downtown, I'm thinking our city staff would come forward and say, listen, it's really too far for A, B, or C to, and so maybe we could. But what I really tried to do was say, okay, free 24-hour parking is important, but maybe if we move that free 24-hour parking to areas peripheral to the downtown, but still available for downtown parking. I mean, really from for most anybody, either the Roundtree lot or the two lots on Furnace Street would be probably at the most a 2-block walk. And I think our streets are well lit, so I don't think that it becomes a danger. It's not like people would have to walk in the dark. I believe there are sidewalks, so I don't think they'd have to walk in the street. So it just seemed like if we moved the free parking overnight to then it doesn't take up space for employees and/or customers during the day.
Anyone else have any comments or questions?
I have a question, what this means. You have here available for lease / proposed, so you have 35.
Well, actually,
So
it ends up
we
being
have
37.
37. Right now, we have 39 leased or available. Is that correct?
Right now, we have 35 available for lease and 4 additional spots that are assigned to city staff. my
That makes 39.
Right, but they aren't leased.
There's 4 free ones to the staff.
Right.
So what's the total number then of available for lease that you're proposing here?
37.
37?
Because I made a mistake in the Mineral Street lot. Instead of 11, that should be 13.
Is that the total for the whole city downtown? We started out with 39 and now you're ending up with 37. Is that correct?
I don't
We've
know
gone-
what your question is, Ken. We
We've gone
started
back-
out with 35 available for lease and 4 assigned to city staff. Those aren't
Well-
available for lease. This proposal is for 37 to be available for lease. So that's actually 2 more than are currently available for lease.
Which is only 35 plus the 4 to staff. Anyway, we're not doing much to improve the situation by following this plan. Right now, what I've figured out is that we have 62 24-hour parking spots. And plus we have 39 leased, or we're gonna call it 35, which makes 101. And in the previous writing, I think from Howard, we had a number available for assignment or leasing was 91. Is that correct, Howard? We had that a couple weeks ago, or maybe it's months ago already. Anyway,
If we did all of the,
did all 24-hour parking.
if we did all of the stalls, it would have been 102.
Yes, so 101, 102. So we're not doing much to follow this thing.
Well, I guess, I don't actually understand your statement of we're not doing much. I believe that this proposal, one of the things that we heard was from our constituents, particularly our downtown business owners who have rental property in downtown, that has tenants, is that, the plan that we had in front of us converted almost everything to only lease. And there was a feeling that we needed to have 24-hour parking that was not leased. So the kind of the modification or the compromise, so to speak, that is proposed with this plan is, yes, we hear that 24-hour free parking is desired. And perhaps from a business standpoint, it makes, from a city standpoint, it makes better sense to have that 24-hour free parking on the periphery to the downtown rather than in the closer to the main street. So this moves that leased parking to the periphery and the free parking to the periphery, and then says, if you want to lease, if you want to be closer to your apartment, if you want to have a spot that's not 2 blocks away, that's only 1 block away, then you're going to have to pay a little for it. And it makes 37 of those available, but if they aren't leased, then it makes those non-leased ones available for full day parking, just not overnight parking.
But as we discussed before, you've only increased the leased parking by 2.
So by that, comment, do you mean that you would like to see more leased parking?
I'd like to see more leased parking available. I mean, if you want to talk about periphery, I mean, the post office, you're doing, post office, what's that, 26? Yes, 26, 24 hour, and you're leaving post office, you're leaving 13. Now, I see the post office very frequently, and I see the situation that, for example, yesterday, the 24-hour parking was filled up completely except for 1 stall. The 3-hour parking the other side had only six cars in it. So those are not shoppers that are using the 24-hour. Those are people that are staying overnight. So all this does is move to the periphery. It's not increasing the number of leased except by 2, depending on how you interpret it.
That's correct, but I don't think that the number that we have available for lease is currently the number that are being leased. And Howard, I didn't write down, I put the number we have available for lease. I didn't put the number that we actually have leased. The paper that I was working off didn't have the number that were actually leased, but I would venture to say of the 35 that are available to lease, are half of them leased?
As of the writing at the last council meeting, 14 were leased.
Okay, so 14 of 35 were leased at that time. So this proposal, I mean, to me, to dramatically increase the number of leased parking spots, maybe doesn't make sense to provide try to move people to the periphery and get 24-hour parking there, and then to have some leased spots in what I would call the more interior, although if you were in a big city, these words would not be words that you use. Periphery and down, I mean, we'd be looking at all of that as the core of the city. So you're right, it doesn't increase the number of leased spots, but it does provide free parking that we heard from people last meeting, that they wanted free parking, but it does give the city the alternative, a way to begin a leased program in the core of the downtown area. Not to say that if all 53 24-hour free parking spots were filled, and if all 37 were leased, and we had 90 people in those spots all the time, then yeah, we'd probably have to look at additional or something. I was trying to come up with a compromise that might work. Maybe it won't.
I was ready not to vote for any of this because I didn't want it to change. But I can get on board with what Barb is offering. I like the idea that therefore the downtown, all that parking becomes like more available to everyone, to employees, to shoppers, to whoever, because it's not being sat on for overnight 24-hour parking if it's now a block or two away, which isn't a big deal. And I want to ask Howard a question. If, for instance, with snow removal, which we know winter is like half the year, isn't it easier to have it more in specific locations and ask those folks who are parked there on a certain time, certain day to empty out a lot, and therefore it'd be easier to clean up a lot?
What we've done in the past is for those that are free parking, 24-hour parking stalls, we would post a no parking for a couple of days hence, and then do it at that time. For the leased parking stalls, we have contact information, and we contact those individuals directly and let them know that on such and such a day, we would like you to move your vehicles between these hours, and then we clean it up at that time.
I think overall it helps out employees, it helps out residents. And until we get to a certain point where there's a lot more demand, then we should look at it further.
Other comments?
Howard, did you mention about doing a turnover every 48 hours? Move cars every 48 hours? Was that at one of these?
I think she's asking about how do you enforce 24-hour parking?
48 hours is on the city streets and residential.
Yes, I would defer that to the police chief on enforcement actions.
You can't park more than 2 days on your street out in residential.
Good evening. We make a point of chalking the tires, but as we've heard from this very podium, some people engage in a little preemptive action on that. So that that is the enforcement that we do though with our community service officers.
So that's in the parking lots and on the street?
On the streets, it's 48 hours. And there we make a point of going down mainly the one-way streets where people tend to park the longest. And we kind of have a routine that the community service officers follow.
So Doug, what's the longest I can park in a 24-hour parking spot without getting a ticket?
In the ideal world, from an enforcement standpoint, 24 hours.
Okay.
Any other questions for the chief? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, other comments, or are we ready to move forward on a plan?
Well, since I wrote the plan, I'll make a motion. We adopt my plan.
Yes.
Is there a
I
second?
mean, I would be
I'll
stupid
second
not to make
Barb's
that
plan.
motion.
All right, we have a motion by Barb and a second by Barb. Is there any further discussion?
Well, the only thing it does is makes it moves them out to the periphery.
Yes, it does, Ken.
It doesn't increase essentially the number of leased.
No, but I think Barb did point out that if there is a demand for more leased, at that point, I think staff will certainly let us know if they have a lot of people coming in and asking for more leased spots. We can address that need if it occurs. All right, any other comments? We'll vote.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Knoll,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Next is Resolution 1810, approving conditional use permit for Rolling Hills Church.
Okay, the Rolling Hills Church would like to purchase a portion of the property at 1595 West Main Street. It's far west side of the city where County B comes in. They are currently using this building for their services, are desiring to build a new facility. So they'd like to purchase the approximately 5 acres of that property to allow for the construction of that church. They would have to do some additional approvals, or some additional approvals would come with that. That we would have to approve a certified survey map to create the lot that they would be building on. The property itself is, I think, about 50 acres in total, so they'd be only getting a small portion of that. Normally, as part of a conditional use permit, we typically have more information on the project than we have now, but due to financial constraints more than anything else, the applicant is requesting approval in stages. So to start with, they just want to find out if anybody has any issues, basically conceptually, with the idea of a church being located at that particular property. And then if everybody's okay with that, they would come in with some additional information and go through the CSM approval. The church itself, they're looking at constructing a building in the future for approximately 200 congregants, and then there would be a parking lot associated with that. The access would come off of a drive off of West Main Street, and then probably an additional drive off the extension of Creek Court from the east. The only concern that staff has with that is that the driveway location off of West Main Street is not at the curve. If you're all familiar with that curve, the visibility is not ideal. So they would be locating it approximately in the location where the street was originally proposed when that land was platted many years ago. So that would provide adequate visibility. So if everybody's on board with this, we would recommend approval with conditions, that they come in with a CSM approval to create the lot, and then come in for a site plan approval. And I didn't update the recommendation since it went to the Plan Commission, but I had staff review and Plan Commission approval, and if council approval, I'm assuming you would prefer to do that as well. The Plan Commission did review this and have recommended approval with those conditions. Any questions?
is, as far as the property boundaries, is it the red line here?
That I drew based on what my understanding of the approximate location they would get. The idea is when that the subdivision was platted, and I did include one of those plats in the packet. Creek Court, as it would be extended to the west, would be the southern boundary, and then the Raymond Drive, or approximately in that location as originally platted, would be approximately the western boundary. It might be a little bit short of that, but that's kind of the general location of the property they would be looking at.
You know, there was one person that expressed a concern about this potential building of the church and the runoff that might take place. And so, have you made any suggestions to the church member or members as far as how to solve that problem? Would you and Howard foresee diversion terrace along the back of these properties here? I mean, I walked it a couple weeks ago and talked to the landowner there, one of them, the one that spoke at the Plan Commission, and I could see where he could be and has been flooded. So what are you making for suggestions to solve that?
Well,
The-
go ahead.
As part of not only the DNR, but city stormwater rules, they have to present a stormwater management plan that shows where their stormwater goes, how they intend to manage that, and meet all of the requirements of DNR and city ordinances. The topography would allow for them to, depending on how they site their buildings and their parking lots and such, that drainage can go into an existing swale that runs from the northeast towards the southwest behind those properties off of Moonlight Drive. But until we get to a place where they've actually identified where their building is going to be, how it's sited, how the parking is going to be established, where it's going to be sited, we don't know where the stormwater would go from those, but they are aware that they need to meet stormwater management ordinances.
Or do we have any water and sewer plan for this area? In other words, if they put the church here, you have Creek Drive. Are you planning on putting curb and gutter on the one side?
We would be extending, we would have the developer extend a street as needed on Creek Court if that's where the if that's where their access is going to be. I mean, you know, Creek Court is platted in order to be extended west, and so that's kind of the intent on that.
It is the primary access to this property to be from County B or West Main Street, or is the primary access to be from Moonlight Drive and Creekside Court?
We haven't determined that.
Yeah, at this point, I don't think we know that until we see where they're gonna locate the building and the parking lot. So that's why, as phase 2, we would need to see. all
So
that.
if you approve this and then they come in and say, we just want to go through Creekside Court or whatever it is, and that we don't feel that that's the best residential street to take all of these cars, but we've approved this, haven't we already gone down a road that it's pretty hard to turn back on?
No, you're approving it conditioned upon them submitting additional information. If that additional information doesn't meet the city's needs or the neighborhood's needs, then you don't approve it.
Because I have the second concern, and I've voiced it a couple of times, about the belief that a property of this size should have a second access point. And I have a concern about if the county will actually allow a driveway permit at an area where they need a driveway permit in order to get to this property. And so I've voiced that concern a couple of times. I don't know if that concern has been voiced to the church itself, but as I've looked at this, I've said, so, they want to carve out this piece, but I know that there was an issue in the past with the county granting access to that property in place. I mean, they control where that access is going to be. The county does. The city doesn't control the access from County B to that property. Is that correct?
For driveway, correct.
So if the access that they request is not approved, I mean, it seems like there's a disconnect. That we could say, go ahead, develop all these plans, and then we could get down the road and find out, they could get down the road and find out that somehow this was missed. And suddenly you know, instead of being able to put their driveway where they want to put their driveway off County B, they have to put it 200 feet or 400 feet further or whatever. And then whose responsibility does it become? And how do we say you have to have two accesses? I mean, I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at. So you know, when I look at this resolution about a conditional permit, it says the property is zoned, which allows the church, they'll need to have the approval of a certified survey map. I'd like to see whereas also in there that they need to have, I don't know, permission or whatever from the county to enter the property from County B.
Any other questions for Joe?
When are they gonna submit the site plan? Depending on whether or not they buy the place? Is that what I heard?
Correct, right.
Does the site plan include the stormwater management plan?
Yes, we would be looking for that information.
So that is a part of the site plan.
Correct.
Because I also share Counselor Killian's concern. This is over a 5-acre parcel, so I think it will be governed by DNR regulations as to stormwater and managing all their runoff within their site, I believe.
Yes, they have to manage it in accordance with not only City of Platteville rules, but DNR
DNR
rules.
rules.
And also that water eventually goes to a wooded area beyond the housing, and that wooded area needs to be kept safe as far as the outlet. In other words, it's more than just the putting in a diversion or putting in a retention pond, a retention basin, but it's also going to mean, I think, the additional water coming off of that basin. Because I'm not a fan of having standing water, especially near a church with people around it a lot.
They would be required to have a pond.
Well, there are other ways to solve it besides a pond, Howard.
Not very many.
Well, I had the same situation that I solved with a diversion. And it's much cheaper, much easier to take care of than a pond.
Might not meet DNR regulations, unfortunately.
Any other comments? Otherwise, the request is to approve the conditional use permit.
I do have another question. That deals with the construction of roads to this. I mean, is the city committing to furthering the construction of Creekside Drive so that they can have a driveway off Creekside Drive into this property? Or is the expectation that the developer, in this case Rolling Hills Church, will put in that road to meet city specifications, and then any driveway and/or parking lot into their property?
The developer, the church, and the property owner are going to be sharing the costs of the street installation, not the city.
The street, and it will be, and the expectation will be that it be to city standards with curb and gutter and storm water or storm sewer or whatever has to be.
Yes,
That includes curb and gutter?
yes.
And
Anybody else have any comments?
Yes, a question. Maybe it's been talked about, but I haven't heard it. What about sidewalks?
That would be part of the site plan as well. That's part of our ordinances. It would depend on where and how the orientation of the church and everything goes. The sidewalk may be required to come down Moonlight and across Creek Court to get to that location, or it could go out West Main Street to get to that location. We would want to look at their site plans and how that would need to be developed to make sure that that's done properly, not only for this development, but for potential future development in that area. We have sidewalk on West Main Street all the way out to Moonlight Drive.
Right, that's what I'm referring to.
We would connect to the existing sidewalk grid at that location.
Anyone else?
Only that I raised these questions, I'm not on the plan commission, I haven't heard this discussion, but the conditional use permit in front of us doesn't cover many of the things we talked about. And, I don't want there to be some kind of misunderstanding in the future about, well, I didn't know we were going to be responsible for the curb and gutter. I didn't know we were going to be responsible for the sidewalk. I didn't know we had to have 2 entrances. I didn't know that it was our responsibility to make sure that we could get a permit from the county to enter this property at the location that we deem appropriate to enter the property. This resolution covers only the property, and it says they want to construct a building. They want to, it's going to be on 5 acres. It's allowable in an R1 family residential area, and that they have to do a map, but it doesn't speak to these other things. And those, maybe a conditional use permit doesn't, and maybe when this presentation was made at the Plan Commission, all of those issues were covered, but it just, it makes me uncomfortable believing, not seeing, and perhaps not having these folks here to hear about it.
Not a rep here tonight?
I do not see one. Yeah, they were at the other meeting, so I'm not sure why they're not
Well,
here.
they should have been here to hear the full message.
Yeah, I would say any items that you feel absolutely have to be addressed, you can add to this approval. Otherwise, a lot of them, we have to see what they're proposing before we can react to it. So some of it's got to wait till we get a plan in front of us.
Well, personally, I believe the second access to this property is essential. I don't know what other people believe, but, I believe having 2 accesses, I believe that our fire department would want 2 accesses to this property. So I'd like to see a whereas the church shall, I mentioned the second permit.
So you would like to make that part of the conditional use permit?
Well, it appears that that's what Joe said we should, isn't that what you just suggested, Joe? That we should add that whereas,
If there's something that you definitely feel needs to be included and you want to give them some heads up, I would add it to the approval.
I guess somehow I'm not seeing this right. So the 5 acres, they do not have to put curb and gutter on what would be considered the north side. Because would it be street? Would they have to put, or is it only going to go to the property line?
The Creek Court improvement, I suspect initially it would just go to the property line and then it'll be a driveway where they connect to it until some point where the rest of that subdivision gets developed.
Okay,
That's what I envision. If
From
you feel
Moonlight.
it's gotta be something more than that, then
well, I'm just looking at the map, and if you extend, there's the end of Creek Court, you basically, that's somebody else's land, that's not what they're buying. So you'd have to extend the street at least as far as they put their driveway, am I correct?
They would need to extend the street and make the street to city standards from the intersection of Moonlight Drive to the point where their driveway would go into
Okay.
the church property.
I'm just concerned that for water runoff and everything, that we have something there for storm water.
All right, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, a motion would.
Is the east and west road that comes off Moonlight Drive called Creekside Court? Does it have a name right now?
It is called Creek Court,
Creek Court.
correct?
Joe, since this is kind of unique as far as the order, it sounds like at any time, staff, the plan commission, if they don't like what the plans are, they give their input, and if it's not changed or sufficient or whatever, then we don't have to go forward with it.
Right. Basically, honestly, we're just trying to make sure that, or they want to make sure that nobody has an issue with the concept of putting a church there. Because if everybody jumped up and said that's not the right location for that, then they would have wasted all this money on an architect and engineer and so forth. So they want to make sure that hurdle is crossed before they make an additional investment of time and resources to get to that next point. So they're aware that they have to do some additional work and provide some additional information, but they wanted to at least get, part one out of the way.
Well, and I personally have no problem with them putting a church there, and I think it's a great thing to develop. I just don't want to get down the road and have them spend money to do a site plan and then find out they can't get a entrance off County B, or to find out that all of a sudden there's more expectation of them. I mean, they're gonna spend money to develop this site.
Correct.
And
I
so
don't see any
while they
issues.
wanna know if it's okay to put a church there, if they want a motion that says, hey, we don't have any problem with your putting a church there, that's fine. I don't have
Right.
a problem with them putting a church there. That's not what this discussion is about. The discussion is about whether or not they can provide two accesses and whether they
And I think providing additional information, details in the approval will only help them make the decision whether they should go forward or not. So if any items that you absolutely say, this is the stuff we're gonna have to see in order for us to approve this in stage 2, let them know now, and it'll only help them out with their planning.
And I would also note, Joe, that the Plan Commission did add a C, which is if the project does not proceed within 2 years of the date the property is purchased, the conditional use permit shall expire unless an extension is requested and granted, because there was some concern that if a conditional use permit was permitted, that it would stay with the property, not with the people requesting the conditional use. This would then say that this particular entity has 2 years to actually construct something. If they don't, they would have to come back in and ask for a conditional use again.
Right, yeah, I think the plan commission didn't want this sitting out there 10, 15 years from now, nothing happening, people wondering, is that approval still good or not?
I'd like to see a whereas added that the church will need to receive approval from the county for entrance on the northern side of the property. I don't know. It's where it would be, on the north side of the property. I mean, I think they need to have that in writing. And I guess I would continue that and construct an appropriate street with access from that street to access their parking lot from the south side of the property.
Is that a motion?
Well, I guess that's a motion to add that whereas to the resolution.
So is your motion to approve the resolution with that addition?
No, because do you want to include yours that this is for 2 years?
Well, actually, that is on the resolution that
Oh, if the
was
project
included
does
in
not
our
proceed
packet.
within 2 days.
Yep, resolution 1810.
And this is a resolution, this conditional use permit is specific for a church, is that correct? Or is this plainly a conditional use permit that could be used for anything?
No, it's just church.
Okay, specifically for a church. Yes, if you add that whereas, then I will make a motion to adopt resolution 1810.
I'll second.
So, everyone understand the motion? Okay. We'll vote.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Next is Resolution 1811, approving a conditional use permit for the asphalt plant.
Okay, this is annual request from Iverson Construction. They operate asphalt plant in the rock quarry of Mineral Street. The only issues that have ever come up regarding this operation have been some complaints about dust from the driveway coming into the property. They did pave the driveway a few years ago and then have done some spot dust control as needed, and that seems to have taken care of the problem. So staff does recommend approval. Again, the Plan Commission did recommend approval. The only change is the Plan Commission is saying that instead of having to do this every year, they're saying, why don't we try every 2 years and see how it goes? So that is the recommendation. Otherwise, same as every other year we've done this. Any questions?
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 1811?
Also move.
A second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve Resolution 1811, and we'll vote.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
D is Resolution 1812, Stream Bank Stabilization Grant.
Okay. We have concerns about stream bank erosion in Katie's Garden by the Chamber of Commerce and in other areas on university property. There are 50/50 grants available, and we would need to submit a grant request by April 16th. We've been working with Delta 3 Engineering and Angie Wright to complete a grant submission. Since this was printed, there has been updates. The state DNR has sent an email to the university saying that they do in fact allow some state monies to be used for match as long as they're not in certain categories, and they've defined them. I'm not privy to all the different categories, but the university people who I've been in contact with say that that's workable for them. So right now, our timeline would be to submit a grant with a draft intergovernmental agreement by April 16th. DNR would review and award grants in some late summer or fall, and the grant funding would be available in 2019. And that would mean that we would need to arrange for city local match funding for the non-university portions for the 2019 budget.
So it's a 50/50 grant. So 50% has to come from city or the chamber?
That would be correct.
Well, my question is, who owns the land where the riprap would be put?
The Chamber of Commerce owns the property. The city has an easement that allows us to do stream bank stabilization and to include measures to prevent erosion and things like that as part of the trail project.
And how much of the trail is covered by this easement?
The entire portion of the trail that's on Chamber of Commerce property is covered by the easement. through the Chamber of Commerce property, it was negotiated back in the late 90s. They basically made the easement to be 75 feet from the center line of the Roundtree branch, excluding buildings.
Is the easement also going up to, say, 8081?
We have easements as part of the MPO project, the trail project. We were required to get easements from all the property owners for the entire length of that trail from Chestnut Street out to the gazebo out behind Walmart and Menards, and that was part of the project, was to do that.
Thank you.
Other questions? So, this resolution would allow the city manager to sign the grant application on behalf of the city.
Yes.
Is there a motion to move forward with that?
I move we adopt Resolution 1812, Governmental Responsibility for Runoff Management Grants.
I'll second.
Is
There's a
any
motion and a
estimate
second.
yet on cost?
75,000.
If we do all three of the projects, we're looking at 175,000. 75,000 would be for the area along the Chamber of Commerce.
That'd be Site C.
Correct.
Are they gonna contribute? The chamber?
We have not asked the chamber for a contribution, in part because we have an interest in the trail being protected. I would also note that the chamber serves as the city's tourism entity, so part of our room tax dollars help support the visitor center that's there.
Are you saying the room tax money would be used for the grant?
No, I'm saying that because they serve as our tourism entity, that some of our funding supports operations that are conducted on that site.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Null,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
In our packet, we have 2017 budgeted carryovers.
At the end of each budget year, departments have an opportunity to request carryover for unspent funds, and so these are the requests for, from the 2017 budget to be carried over to 2018. $47,835 of unspent funds from the City Hall HVAC air exchanger project, to be put towards the City Hall upgrade. $2,500 of unspent funds from cemetery outlay for a UTV vehicle, and then $5,958 of unspent funds from the Senior Center Eckstein grant in the revenue budget. So that would be a total of $50,335 in expense accounts and $5,958 in revenue accounts.
Is there a motion to allow this carryover?
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Null,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next is the selection of the consultant for the housing study and needs analysis.
Yes, the city has been working with our community partners with the goal of completing a housing study and needs analysis. The council's put some money into it, and some of the community partners also put some funds into it, so our total budget is $25,000. The first step was to do a request for proposals to find a consultant that would complete that study. We received 4 proposals. The review committee took a look at those and narrowed it down to 2, Veerbecker Associates and Redevelopment Resources. Invited them in for a presentation, interview, and question and answer session. Following that, the committee felt that Veerbecker and Associates would be the best firm to conduct that study. They've got some experience doing some additional studies. They seemed to best address all the items that we had included in our RFP, and they are within the budget. So the committee is recommending selecting Veerbecker Associates to complete the study, and their proposal is to do that for $24,500. So that is staff's recommendation. Any questions?
When is the study expected to be done, completed by?
I don't remember the exact deadline we had in the proposal, October, I believe, but our goal was to have something in front of the council so we can make some decisions at budget time. And I think Veerbecker had indicated that they would anticipate they could have some preliminary proposals well before that time.
Any other questions?
And we have used Veerbecker for other projects within the city. It's been a few years, but they've done several projects for us over the years.
Did you mention, or I think it's in here, that the schools are gonna be involved?
Yes. They were invited to have a rep on the review committee, but I don't know if they declined or they couldn't get anybody to meet that timeline.
The school district is a partner in this study, but they did not send anyone to participate in the interviews.
So is there a motion to hire the consultant?
I move we hire Veerbecker at $24,500. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, next, we go to information and discussion, and we will first have a library strategic plan and update. And if you want to turn around and look at the back of the room for everybody on the chairs out there, we do have a presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here. It's National Library Week, so happy National Library Week, everyone. So we thought it would be a perfect time for me to stop in and give you an update on what's been happening at the library. As you know, we moved into our new building at the end of June of 2017, so I have a little bit of information, and I just remembered I forgot my sheets back there. I will get those for you in just a second. Blue folder. Thank you. So I'll be passing out some stats about our annual report for 2017. There are some copies in the back there too, in case any members of the public are interested. Oh, all right. So good job, Don. You're so organized. So I will kick it off here. We just completed our strategic planning process. It's a 5-year strategic plan. The library board approved it in March, and so we're really pleased to be headed on the right track. So first of all, I'd like to highlight the mission of the Platteville Public Library is to empower and connect our diverse community by providing equal access to resources that educate, enrich, and entertain. So a little bit of background about the strategic planning process. Before we even really knew what the future of the library building itself was, the library board did identify the need for a solid strategic plan. So not knowing the fate of the building project, we broke the planning process into 2 separate sections. We started in 2016 by developing a new mission statement and assessing our organizational values and service standards. And then the second stage took place in September of 2017 when our strategic planning committee was formed, and that committee consisted of library staff and library board members. Of course, I wouldn't be a good librarian without citing my sources. So for your information, when we did our strategic planning process, we had a variety of information inputs, including the annual report data that we submit to the state DPI every year, some census data, and a few surveys. We conducted a survey of library staff and board members, as well as a community survey, which we had 320 responses to. We held 3 community conversations in the fall of 2017. I think some of you maybe attended those, and that was really helpful to hear from community leaders about what they identify as needs within our community and how the library could help address those. So some of the information we discovered through our surveying was that the public is overall very satisfied with the Platteville Public Library. So we were pleased to see that. The patrons place a high value on our customer service, our literacy-based mission, and reliable technology resources. You'll see a couple of stats there at the bottom comparing 2016 to 2017. You would probably expect that we would see a lot of growth in most of these areas. The one I'd like to highlight that we didn't see as much growth as we would like is that circulation of physical materials. Overall, that's a national trend that circulation of physical materials is not on the rise. And I would also like to point out that for the first 6 months of 2016, we were operating with 1 entrance, limited access to parking. We were basically in a construction zone. I'm not complaining about that, though. Of course, we did see an increase in new patrons using Overdrive, and one that we're really excited about is we doubled the number of library cards that we issued in 2017, and we expect that trend to continue. So, of course, we identified a lot of new opportunities. With a new building comes a lot of new opportunities. So some of those we identified were creating multi-generational connections, helping community members overcome barriers related to technology, connecting with partners to help job seekers, and we're already on the right track with that, working with the business incubator, connecting with partners. Oh, sorry, I just read that one. And helping young families by providing free family-friendly social activities and community events. So we came out of our planning process with 5 strategic goals. Goal number 1 is to build and enhance targeted partnerships through library programming, maximizing the utilization of new library spaces, and increasing connections throughout the community. Strategic goal number 2 is to increase community awareness of the library's resources and services, and also defining the library's role in promoting other community events and offerings. Strategic goal number 3 is to thoughtfully manage the new library building so it can best meet the needs of patrons now and into the future. And this is one I'm sure you can appreciate. We're already on the right track. We recently hired a couple of new custodians that are doing excellent work, and we've been working with the city's new employee, Shannon Butson, on creating a building maintenance plan, which we're really excited to put into place. Strategic goal number 4 is to foster accessibility to library spaces and services. So we offer some outreach services, currently to nursing homes and assisted living facilities, but we would like to expand that, and we're looking at things like where's the bus stop nearest the library? What can we do to promote families walking to the library, bike racks, things like that. So we've already had a lot of support from the city staff on making some of those things more accessible. Strategic goal number 5 is to invest in staff development and the organization's culture to create a positive workplace and excellent service. I think you know that once you invest in your staff, the public recognizes that improvement in service as well. So we're excited to do that. We're a member of the Southwest Wisconsin Library System. We are looked at as a leader in the library system because we are the biggest library. We also serve as the resource library. So we are expected to offer services in terms of continuing education and additional resources for some of those smaller libraries. Our library system did recently hire a new system director, and we're really looking forward to creating some partnership there and expanding our opportunities for continuing ed and professional development. So how will we implement and assess our plan, you wonder? Well, the library board will conduct an annual plan assessment, and of course, our goals and processes will be considered during the annual budget decision-making process. We'll prioritize activities that have the most impact in the community and hope to build some scaffolding to build towards some of those longer-term goals. As you are all aware, the Library Foundation is a very valued stakeholder, and I will be sure to keep them informed of our progress and then work with them to submit funding requests to support the activities identified in this plan. With that, I would like to thank you all for your time this evening. I would like to open it up if anyone has any questions about the library.
Questions, anyone? I would like to say that I was loud at the library the other night, which is kind of an oxymoron, but you might want to explain a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, and thank you. I forgot I was going to thank, I saw multiple council members there, and it's really nice to see your support in the community. So we did recently host Loud at the Library. It was a fundraiser for our foundation. We saw about 130 attendees. We raised over $1,000, and it was very loud. So mission accomplished, yeah.
It was a fun evening.
Thank you.
I didn't think it was so loud.
It just depended on where you were standing.
Wow. Okay.
Any other
You're used to
questions?
Parties, Barb. She's used to parties.
Do you have as summer is around the corner, do you have a special library program for children in the summer?
Great question. Yes. So every year we do a great summer library program. We are committed to preventing that summer slide where children will lose some of those skills that they develop during the school year because they're not keeping up with their practice of reading. So we offer weekly programs for infants, toddlers, preschoolers, school agers, teenagers, and adults. The theme this summer is Libraries Rock, so it will have a double meaning, I guess, especially for Platteville. We'll definitely focus on rock and roll, music, performance, things like that. But also we've got our rich mining culture, so we'll be partnering with the library, or the library and the museum will be partnering for some, rock-focused events as well.
Now that sounds loud.
Yeah, could be, yep.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is 2018 City Goals Quarterly Report.
And I don't have much to say about this. As has been our practice, we're reporting back quarterly on the goals that were established by the council at the beginning of the year. In the report, which we handed out tonight, you'll notice that we have a few new items highlighted in red. I would also note that we're continuing to orient, onboard a lot of new staff members from retirements last year. They're doing great work, but we lost a lot of knowledge when those folks retired. Also, listening to what Member Doss said earlier, I think we have the airport runway resurface date wrong, so we'll get that corrected.
Any questions for the city manager on the progress report? All right, seeing none, we, for those of you who are here this evening, thank you to the students who have sat through our whole meeting.
And I would just note for the students, if you want to stop by and give me your names, I'll make sure that your professor knew that you made it to the end.
So thank you for coming. We are going to go off camera now. We do have a work session scheduled, but that will not be televised, so thank you all.